you know?
Yeah.
If the dude cranks my arm and it's because he's 75 pounds heavier than me and it wasn't even really a good arm bar, it's just that he was going to snap my forearm because he's that much stronger than me, okay, then maybe I should focus on keeping my arms close to my body.
I was about to say, you still allowed him to get a hold of them.
Continuing to move, you know, playing on top as much as possible, prioritizing if I'm on bottom, working to get frames and getting back on. Like, there's still going to be some lessons in there if I'm reflecting on them and looking at what actually happened, not trying to find reasons that
I give away my control.
Yes.
Like, okay, this wasn't my fault. So it's not my responsibility to fix, and that's where you fail.
Right. And you're just going to keep getting armbarred.
Welcome to the Second Plan A podcast, where we take hard-earned lessons. We do a test recording, and I kind of skip all this part. And I forgot we were not test recording, and I almost skipped all this part. Welcome to the Second Plan A podcast, where we take hard-earned lessons from the mats and convert them into tools for navigating life's challenges and life's cats. I'm Amber Hoover. I'd rather stick to the plan.
This is Vader Hoover, and he's a cat, so he doesn't really do plans. Clearly, we're at home today because we are tight on time.
It's been crazy. All right. Well, welcome, Vader, to the podcast. This is going to be just our norm. So, on this episode, and listen, we are getting right into it. We are talking failure and cats, apparently. We're talking about failure. Ryan, you posted on your Instagram, your social media handles, as well as pretty quickly had an article out about it, about a whiteboard quote that was, "Failure is not an option." Mm-hmm. But apparently failure is a lifestyle choice. Mm-hmm. He's never this obsessive. Like, he's always
he's
here.
A cat. He knows
I know.
what he's doing.
I read that quote so many times, just mostly because I was confused. I was like, it's not an option, but it is a choice, apparently.
Yeah.
Kind of like this cat making lots of choices.
Yeah.
And it just hurt my brain, and I walked on. You went down deep on the rabbit hole on this one.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty proud of that, because it just deserves a little bit more than just this failure is not an option kind of whiteboard fame that it got. So
yeah.
Tell me a bit about your kind of instincts as you read it. Like I said, my first thing, I was like, wait, it's not an option, but it's a choice. Is there a difference? I don't think so. I don't understand where they're going with. What were you thinking?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not much on the whole motivational quote thing anyway. It's not really my jam. Mm-hmm. But every now and then I'll see one that, kind of resonates and makes a lot of sense. But most of the time it's some trite, banal, trivial BS like this one that, if you really, really think about it, makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And then even if it did make sense in the way that it's presented, it's just factually not true. Like, it's just not accurate.
Yeah.
What it's purporting to say or do is the opposite of what is required to be truly successful in anything.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Failure is kind of the barometer, the standard. It's how we figure out where our ceiling is and then push past it. If we don't know where that our current limit on whatever it is, then it's not possible to grow beyond it. And it's wild to me to see a quote like that in a gym, a fitness center, where the whole premise is, I want to be better than what I am right now. Okay, so how do I achieve that? How do I attain that? How do I figure out what that even means?
Yeah, where am I right now?
Yeah. And so if I'm only going in and lifting what I know I can lift, and that's all I ever do, how is there any growth there? How is there any improvement there? How do I get stronger, faster, fitter, whatever it is? Like, there's no, you're basically just doing a self-diagnostic that is based on maybe what you once were, or what you thought you might be, or what you lie to yourself about. But if you're not actually pushing to fail, and this is in a gym context, but obviously this goes way beyond just a gym.
Yeah.
If you're not pushing to fail, you're never going to figure out where those limits are and if there's something beyond that.
Every entrepreneur that talks about starting your businesses and growth and development and stuff like that talks about the importance of failure. Every sports team, something, talk about getting out there, putting yourself out there, and learning from losses and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned a lie in there, and so I kind of, in my mind, again, this quote was in a lifting type gym, and let's say I go in and I've never done anything before, and so I'm like, well, let me try to do. That's Boo Hoover. Let me try to do 4 sets with 10-pound weights. If I can do 4 sets of 10-pound weights, then I walked in and I do that and I'm like, oh, I'm the best. I'm great. And if you have no other place to start, you don't have any idea. And so you do it and you're like, oh, this is really cool. But then the next time you walk in the gym, if you do that exact same 4 sets of 10 at 10 pounds, right, you're like, okay, well, now what are we doing? Sorry, I'm dying.
Pollen here. If you're not in the South, we are currently covered in yellow dust everywhere. I checked yesterday, and the meter that they use to gauge this stuff is about as high as it can possibly be. So tree pollen, we live in the woods, so tree pollen is killing us all slowly.
And as you hear, we have critters that love to track it in and out all day, throughout the day. But yeah, so let's talk about this comfortable lie. Who are the people who can say that I don't fail, I've never failed? Like, what does that look like? What does that person look like?
They look comfortable. It's like the people that only put the good things on social media. It's the guys that only roll with the people they know they can beat. They only spar with the people they know they can beat. They read books that affirm what they already believe. In the gym, if my goal is just to look good on Instagram or look good compared to the person next to me, then I'm not going to put weights on that make me look like I'm struggling or failing or whatever. I'm going to do the things that I know I can do that make me look good, And I mean, I think that's a human trait, but it's not one I think that's shared by people that are high achievers. High achievers understand that it's going to require me to push beyond that comfort zone, to push beyond where I look good,
Yeah.
It's going to require me to look ugly. It's going to require me to lose. Maybe even sometimes I win ugly,
Yeah.
But it was a struggle to do it, If it's easy, I think, and that nothing worth having is easy kind of thing, but there's a lot of truth to that, If it's easy, there's a reason that it's easy.
And everyone's going to do it, and
Right.
there's a reason that very few people are at elite levels. I think in school, we can see a lot of where some kids struggle throughout a lot of the learning process, and they're constantly working hard and really trying, and they have to put in a lot of time to understand concepts or remember history or whatever it is. And then you do have some people that just get things. Mm-hmm. And so they go through elementary school, maybe even middle school. And in my experience, I even had friends in high school that they never really had to put in the work. They never really had to study. They just got things. And then when you get to a point where you're 18, 19, you've never really had to work before, and you get into college level situations or whatever, and you finally hit a point where you're challenged,
Right.
You have decisions to make in terms of, okay, well, now that I've hit this limit, how do I handle that?
Yeah.
And that's where people tend to see that first step as failure, but it isn't. That's just you finding that ceiling. Failure would be giving up at that point.
Yeah.
Like if we went like all the way back to my favorite Greek philosophers, Socrates defined failure as the person who stays down, falling and staying down. And so, maybe we need two different terms. One for failure, which is good and we need it and it should have a positive connotation. And then one for just, I guess, quitting would be just the other side of that. And people confuse those two a good bit.
Yeah, for sure.
I hope you guys are enjoying this softer side of Ryan.
The animals all love me.
It's true. It's really annoying. But also cats, man.
It doesn't even have to be our animals. It's just
I'll
animals.
like throw myself on the ground and let a dog do whatever, like when I'm first meeting it, and it'll come up to me and be like, okay, ooh, I'm going to go to him. I'm like, what the fuck?
Doesn't bother her at all.
No.
She's not bothered one little bit by it.
Not even a little bit.
So anyway, yeah, and we have talked about before, like the concept and idea of knowing when to quit and move on to something else.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
There's definitely something to that.
You do have to quit things.
But you have to try them first.
Yeah.
To know if it's not right for you, then you have to actually try it, put energy and effort into it and see that. And so if school's not for you, or if weightlifting is not for you, but running is, or, whatever it is, again, kind of depending on what your goals are, what you're trying to achieve or accomplish. But the idea of saying that, or implying that somehow failure is a flawed choice, is absurd. Like, it's ridiculous. I think failure should be...
It's not a character trait.
Right. It's failure is built into success. It's like yin and yang, dark and light, black and white, whatever. You can't have one without the other.
Yep.
Good, bad. I think failure and success are the same, I don't know of anybody that is super successful in whatever endeavor field that hasn't found some measure of failure along the way, and it more often than not drove them to the success because they figured out what didn't work, or they figured out what wasn't right or accurate or whatever, and that allowed them to make the next choice, which maybe led to another failure. It's like saying, well, if I'm going to invent the light bulb and the first time I try it, it doesn't work, then okay, guess a light bulb's not going to be a thing. We move on to,
yeah. He found a lot of ways not to make a light bulb, right?
It's ridiculous. Like it is. I think that's the problem with a lot of these kind of short motivational things, because you're trying to boil down concepts and principles into these quick, pithy, like 6-8 word kind of things, and generally that's just not how we work. We want to be able to read that and be like, fuck yeah, failure is a lifestyle. Like, but then it's like, what? Wait, is that accurate? Is that right? Is that what I want?
Yeah.
Is that what I'm shooting for? Like,
I think somebody commented on your post. I can't remember who it was. They commented a couple times. This one really got under their skin. They're like, when you see train to failure on your workout, what does that mean? How do you do that? You just train to lifestyle choice? Like, for my lifestyle, I think 60 pounds is enough. That's all I'm going to do.
Right. Yeah, it's anybody that's ever done anything knows it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I think coaches, motivational people, whatever, leaders try to come up with these catchy sound bites that are designed to push people to some next level, and you just hope they never actually try to understand what it means.
Don't think about this too much. Just roll with it.
Yeah.
And then, get it tattooed on your arm or your ribs or whatever.
Don't do that.
It makes me think about the other kind of side of this would be using the word like defeated. I have failed many times. I've never been defeated, which I think we've made that shirt.
Yeah.
And it said I have failed many times over and over and over and over and over again. And then the last line was I've never been defeated. Right. And that's back to what the Socrates quote is saying, is that failure is absolutely an option. Mm-hmm. If you could choose to stay down, you can choose to quit, to give up. You can choose to be defeated, or you can choose to get back up and get going.
Yeah. The great philosopher Chael Sonnen once said that failure is the most readily available option.
Yeah.
And he's 100% right. Failure is the easiest thing to do. The hardest thing is to recognize the failure, acknowledge the failure, acknowledge that failure is part of what we're doing, and then look for the next thing past it. I had a conversation with a doctor last week before, and we were talking about brain injuries, concussions, that kind of thing. And he was talking about some advances in some peptides that are showing signs of being able to help with people that have suffered traumatic brain injuries. And the analogy he gave was like, if you see a trail of ants, they're very uniform and they're moving in a very obvious direction and they're all going together or whatever, and you drop a rock down on the trail and they just kind of scatter and they're going all over the place and everywhere. And he's likening this to a brain injury, where when you first get this injury, there's a lot of rerouting that's happening and not really knowing where to go from there. And he said, if you watch the ants, after a couple of minutes, all of a sudden they're back in formation and they're moving around the rock and they're going right back to where they were before, as opposed to, well, we're just going to keep running around in circles.
Scattering.
This obstacle, this thing is in my way. Initially, yes, it's causing me some problems. I'm recognizing that this was not part of the plan. It has kept me from going where I was trying to go, and I could continue to scatter, or we can get back on course and figure out what the next step is. And that kind of stuck with me, kind of resonated with me a little bit with regards to this conversation. Something like an ant being able to see that,
pull it up by itself, up by its bootstraps. Like, oh shoot, okay, that was,
we still have a job to do.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be deterred, at least long term, by this rock. So,
well, a couple episodes ago, we talked about like that innate response in zebras as well, understanding where they need to go to get grass, when it's going to be scarce, and not having to make these decisions kind of individually. And ants function the same way in terms of some innate, like, we have to get it back together. And then, one of the freedoms that human have is this complexity in our thought and our flexibility in our thinking. But then a lot of the downside of that is then I can't just freely think like, okay, boom, back on track, back on plan. I have to make the adjustments. I have to make the considerations. I have to decide for myself what I want my health to be, what I want my skill sets to be, that sort of thing, rather than what shape do I need to be in to get food? Where do I need to hunt? Where do I need to gather? That sort of thing.
Well, and that goes back to the Chael Sonnen quote, because the most readily available option is just to quit and move on to another thing. Accept this as a failure, and I'm going to go. It's like people that start a diet, and or a workout routine or a business, whatever,
starting anything,
literally anything. And the first time you run into some sort of obstacle, and you will, like, if it's anything worth doing, you're going to run into some sort of thing that is going to impede you. The most readily available option is to peace out, move on to something else. Well, this diet doesn't work, I'm going to go do another diet. But that's habit building. I'm building the habit of, whenever something gets hard, I quit and I move on to a new thing. And in our world, that's how you would mostly define failure. I'm not doing the hard things. I'm recognizing that I want the results that come with the hard work, but I'm not willing to push past
the hard thing.
And if I never push to my ceiling, then I never have to admit any sort of failure, right? I can find comfort in just beating 8-year-olds playing basketball, or smashing white belts that have never played a sport, or whatever. If I never define that ceiling, then I never experience that failure, and I can find comfort in saying I never lost.
Well, because if you haven't found that ceiling, then you can kind of say, like, there is no ceiling, or there must not, like, I haven't found proof that there is a ceiling, so I can get away with internally, egotistically defining my own ceiling as it not being there. You mentioned the habit that forms when you consistently allow yourself, you hit a wall and you allow yourself to go to a different thing. And if you never come back to it, it's different if you're doing a thing and you get stuck. So then you go run around outside with the dogs or, whatever, and then come back to it and push further and clear your head, that sort of thing. Versus like, this diet didn't work, I'm done, I'm on to the next one. Building this habit of failing and quitting when it gets hard. I mentioned Socrates earlier, who looked at failure as staying down, giving up, quitting. Aristotle would then come around to look at excellence, success as a habit. Mm-hmm. And by the other side of that, failure also being a habit. Right. If you are in the habit of failing, I hate using words like that. If you continue to allow yourself to hit a rock and quit, hit an obstacle, get to where something gets hard and then quit and bail on it, you're building this habit of failure rather than building the habit of success and excellence by pushing through and overcoming obstacles, which I think was what we talked about last episode, where you have a kid that breaks a board and you're teaching them that, like, yeah, you have this tough thing in front of you, you can do this, and trying to build those habits early on as you go in life.
Right. Well, and the flip side of that is if he tries to break the board 3 times and he gets frustrated and he quits, then we're accepting that as an okay
solution to which, by the way, I've sat there with kids throwing a lot of kicks and I've been like, oh my God, like, is this gonna work? And I've done a lot of let me turn it in a little bit. But they've all broken it eventually. Darren Hardy talks about coming up on an obstacle and having this, rather than thinking, oh, this is difficult, this is hard, realizing that this is a big turning point. This is like a big separation point. The people who make it through this obstacle, it's going to thin out the herd kind of thing. Like, a lot of people are going to quit and bail. And if I can push through this, I get into a smaller pool of people who have made it. And when I hit the next wall, a lot of people are going to fall off here. But if I can push through this, I make it into the next level of people who have made it.
Yeah. Darren Hardy also talks about setting big, hairy, audacious goals. Mm-hmm. The idea of, listen, I'm gonna set a goal that even I don't think maybe I can achieve or is reasonable in the amount of time that I have or whatever. But I'm aiming high, and I think obviously there's some reason to be had in there, but I think there's something to that. If you're always shooting low, if you're always aiming low, if you're always setting your goals again at something that is not audacious, is not bold, is not maybe a little scary, probably a lot scary in some cases, then the growth that I think most of us want to see or achieve in relationships or job or business or health or whatever it is, it's going to be very, very difficult to do. We're again just kind of, we're playing small. Yeah. And that's just not where the gains are. That's not where the growth is.
No, that's not where a lot of things are. If you're playing small, everybody can play in that pond, in that field. And we go all the way back to being comfortable. If you're 250 pounds and you're only rolling with 150 pounders, like,
right. And you get side control and just stay there.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no growth there.
Nobody's getting better from that.
All right. We've talked a lot about what growth isn't. So you wrote, growth is failure plus reflection, not failure plus excuses, not failure plus a motivational quote and bouncing back. And so I feel like that's a shot at a lot of industries, but just a lot of things in general, because there's this idea that, well, you win or you learn. Yeah. And it's like, well, no, like, again, failure is an option. Right. You can lose and quit and not grow from this experience.
It goes back to the conversation about yin and yang earlier. For someone to lose, for someone to win, someone likely has to lose. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging the loss. I think it's wrong when we characterize it as something that's not that. Yeah. Because again, if we relate it back to jiu-jitsu for a minute, you should learn way more from someone submitting you than you will ever learn from being submitted.
Yeah, you
or
should.
from
Yeah.
submitting someone.
Yeah.
You submitting someone, it's likely something that you've done over and over again. It's a pathway that you have a structure, you have a plan, you have a protocol to get there. I'm not saying there aren't ever lessons there, but the real lessons are when you get submitted,
Yeah.
or in kickboxing, whatever, you get punched or you get kicked. What did that person do to set me up that allowed me to get caught in that? And so that loss, that failure, and that's where the choice is. If we're going to talk about lifestyle choices, that's where it is.
Yeah.
I can choose to take that loss, because it is a loss, and then make it a meaningful lesson.
Yeah.
Or I can come with excuses about,
Well,
why.
I didn't sleep well last night,
Yeah,
and
like- Yeah, they're 50 pounds heavier than me, or whatever it is. And look, there's going to be some truth to those things, but that's life. People are going to start in business and they're going to have more money than you. People are going to start in roles and they're going to have more size than you. Like that.
Yeah.
That is just how it goes. People are going to have innate advantages regardless of what we are talking about. And if you only focus on those things, if you only focus on everybody else's assets and your liabilities, you're going to be stuck forever with wherever you are right now.
it's back to comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where you're really going to lose out. So when we dig deeper on reflection, this gets difficult. I think it's important to not have like an all or nothing thinking here, and realize that multiple things exist at the same time. Like you can have been giving up weight. Maybe you didn't sleep well the day before. Maybe you aren't very hydrated. All these things can be true, but there are still, like, you still lost. There are still lessons to be had. So even if all those things are true and you got caught in an arm bar, you still made a mistake, even if while it was dehydrated and sleep deprived, that led to that arm bar.
Right.
Go find it.
Right. The mistake may have started yesterday, but it was still a mistake.
It was still a mistake. Yeah.
But even if all those things are true, the circumstances in that moment in time still had to lead to this person armbarring me.
Yeah.
Like me placing my arm in a certain position, or allowing that person to place my arm in a certain position, didn't happen because I didn't drink enough water yesterday.
Right. Right.
Like, is there a cumulative effect of poor choices that I have made that will affect my performance? Yes, 100%. But if I'm always just looking at those things, then I'll never really get the lesson of what happened.
Yeah.
If the dude cranks my arm and it's because he's 75 pounds heavier than me, and it wasn't even really a good arm bar, it's just I thought he was going to snap my forearm because he's that much stronger than me. Okay, fine. Then maybe I should focus on keeping my arms close to my body.
I was about to say, you still allowed him to get a hold of
move,
them. Yeah.
Playing on top as much as possible, prioritizing if I'm on bottom, working to get frames and getting back on. Like, there's still going to be some lessons in there if I am reflecting on them and looking at what actually happened, not trying to find reasons that
I give away my control.
Yes.
Like, okay, this wasn't my fault. So it's not my responsibility to fix, and that's where you fail.
Right. And you're just going to keep getting armbarred.
Yeah, yeah. Even if it's a bad arm bar. All right, so what can we do as coaches here? Like, what's our responsibility towards the room, towards people, towards creating environments where people can fail in a room but grow from it?
Yeah. Intellectual honesty, which nobody likes.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
It's like scenario work. Good scenarios are designed, one, based on the individual, right? It should be about the individual, not the scenario. Failure is built in, and failure is not bad. Failure is not wrong. Failure should happen in some scenario work, because that's where we find out where my gaps are.
Yeah.
Are my gaps in de-escalation? Are my gaps in reading body language? Are my gaps in time management, space control, understanding escalation of tone and voice, or am I getting all of that, but then I'm failing on the fight side of things?
Yeah. Am I trying to jump to higher force when it's not warranted too
Right.
early? And
If in every scenario I'm put in, I'm always coming out on top, I'm always winning, then I'm not growing. I'm not getting better. It's the idea of, if you are the best person on the mat every time, it's going to be very difficult for you to grow and improve. Now, I would argue that if that's the case and you like the mat that you're on, start teaching, start coaching some, you'll find ways to improve there and just in your understanding of things. But at the end of the day, you're either going to have to find a new mat, a new room, or be willing to put yourself in bad positions, and work your way out of them.
Yeah. Give other people like a serious advantage, head start, and see how you go from there.
Yes.
Which has a lot of value to it. It sucks.
Yeah.
But that has so much growth potential for you.
But the only reason that it really sucks is your ego.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if I give somebody back mount, and I give them a seatbelt kind of control and hooks in from back mount, well, that's the equivalent of us running a 100-meter race, and I'm spotting you 40 meters, 50 meters, whatever. I shouldn't win that.
Yeah.
I should not win, right?
Yeah.
And so that's again me figuring out where my ceiling is. All right. Well, if at a 100-meter race, we sprint and I smoke you, okay, and then I give you 10, and I give you 20, I give you 30, whatever.
This is a true story, by the way.
I'm gonna find eventually where that limit is, where that ceiling is, and it's the same for jiu-jitsu. It's the same for kickboxing. It's the same for any place where I want to push myself beyond what I know I can already do. If that's adding an extra 2.5 pounds plates on my bench, then fine. I keep doing that until I get to a place where I'm like, okay, yeah, that was it. So now I know what that threshold is. And I can decide if I want to put the time and energy and effort into pushing past that or not.
All right. So as a final rewrite of this board, you dissected these pieces into failure is not a lifestyle choice. It's a growth requirement. If you're not failing, you're freeloading off your own potential.
Yeah. And I'm not a huge fan of the word potential, but I think it works here. Because basically again, if you're saying if it's like a self-assessment or self-diagnosis, it's like, well, I could do this, or I could do that, but I'm not gonna
try
actually do it. I'm
not gonna work hard to actually be able to do that.
Right. And so I think failure just has to be built in, and as soon as everybody acknowledges it and gets comfortable with that idea, everything becomes so much not easier but simpler,
because it's better rooted in reality.
Yeah, it's like Buddhism. Life is suffering, so.
Yeah, if you're going in at that level, then
as soon as you recognize that, again, it's an expectations game.
Yeah.
As soon as I recognize, okay, life is not going to be all sunshine and rainbows.
Right.
Then when it's not, I'm not like, oh my God, what is this? I can't deal with it. I'm gonna shelter in place, and I'm not gonna go outside until the sunshine and rainbows are back. I'm going to. Today I did legs, and it sucks. Everybody, it is what it is. But I looked at my list from the last time I did legs, and I knew I was going to be short on time. I knew I was tightening up my rest times, but I still decided, all right, I need to push beyond this because my last two were pretty much the same.
And it's time to push. I can do this. It's time to push. Yeah.
I know that I haven't found that ceiling yet. And again, we've talked about this previously. I have very specific goals right now, and they were a bit arbitrary in that I picked a number, but that number is a thing for me to achieve, and I can't achieve it by doing the same things that I've been doing.
The benefit of numbers. Yeah. That's why I like numbers so much.
Yeah, that's why I hate them.
All right. Shout out to Vader Hoover for hanging out the entire episode. I have no idea what's going on with him. He must have missed us last weekend. He is out.
Oh, he's out. He hasn't moved.
That's our look at failure is not an option and other lies. Thank you for listening to the Second Plan A podcast. Man, I hate doing this without a script. If you enjoyed this podcast, you know what to do. Interact, leave comments, subscribe, follow, 5 stars. All of that helps us out a ton. If you didn't like this podcast, make sure you do the same. Share it with all your friends. Talk about how terrible it is. And we look forward to growing with you next time.
Thanks, everybody.